Welcome. It is no accident that you have found your way to the Release the Genie podcast. What would you do with 3 wishes? And what if you discovered that you are in fact that very genie that could grant them? Well, join us now as we discover who our next genie is as we listen in and learn the stories of triumph, inspiration, and passion with some very special guests. And now, without further delay, your host of the Release the Genie podcast, Mr. Paul Rogers.
That's so much better. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you're tuning in from. I am your host, Paul Rogers, and welcome to another episode of Release the Genie. I have got a wonderful, wonderful genie today, the wonderful Jackie Pilgrim. Now, if you haven't seen her or haven't connected with this person, you have been missing out. Let me just give you a quick rundown. Founder of autismslove, the Pilgrimage USA. Jackie Pilgrim is a Christian, mum, advocate, entrepreneur, blogger, poet, artist, and public speaker. I think that's pretty much most things ever. The organization of founder autismslove is dedicated to advocacy, education, and supports advocacy to families and persons with disabilities, where all citizens are met by and it's second nature. Jackie is also a member of the National Black Disability Coalition, the NBDC, and the National Alliance on Mental Illness, the NAMI. But to be honest, this is a fierce, fierce advocate, and whatever you're now going to hear is just going to be a joy. So I'm going to hand over the mic to the lovely Jackie. How are you doing today, Jackie?
I'm great, and thank you so much. That was an awesome introduction. Thank you. I'm doing well today. How are you doing?
I am all good, and I'm always excited to talking to you. You're just we gel, so it's going to be an awesome thing. So I've kind of set the backdrop for you. So tell us a little bit more about you.
Okay. Well, I am. Oh my gosh, I am 55. And I'm mom to the most amazing, most wonderful young adult ever on the planet, my son, who lives and who teaches me and thrives with severe autism every day, epilepsy, and a host of other health conditions that have been very challenging. But for a person who goes through as much as he goes through, he showed me the pureness of laughter and joy, even in times of severe pain. So I can't complain about any aspect of my life, and I am so thrilled that I am the one chosen to be his mom. So other than that, I'm Jackie, and I have a diagnosis of Asperger's disorder. I was actually diagnosed at the age of 46. So even though I jokingly tell people, even though I've only had my diagnosis for 9 years, I've been autistic all my life. I'm still trying to work that out and figure that out. I am a person, and I know the list is kind of long, but I'm a person who loves to learn, and I love cerebral stimulation. So I'm always learning, always doing, always figuring things out. Excuse me. It's actually one time during a job interview, after I listed a whole host of things I could do, the person asked me, he said, "Well, is there anything else you can do?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I can change a tire, not break a nail." So, and he was quite tickled by that. And I thought that was really quite the feat, because I had very, very long nails at the time. So, so I'm a creative person, and I'm a person who has a heart for listening. I'm a person who has grown up feeling like I was a misfit, and I embraced that, because it was something about being a misfit that was more comforting than being normal. Yeah. So as I embraced my misfitness, I kind of joined this merry band, and just a collection of beautiful souls, and we get together and we share our stories, and we give ourselves and each other permission to be raw and not judged. And that's just life. So that kind of mutated into something that looks somewhat like advocacy.
Yeah.
It certainly fit the bill, but my advocacy is constantly growing because I'm finding that there's a constant need.
And more so now, to be honest, because the whole world appears to be on fire,
Right.
and that it feels like people have lost their way. And so to be able to connect with somebody who is so grounded and has the experience as well, that must actually really feel quite energizing for you.
I was just about to say, well, who is this person? I want to know who you're talking about. But
Oh,
I think I see it more as meeting these people has been more of a gift to me. I don't really see myself as anything special or any particular draw. But what I do appreciate is the ability to connect to other people and for them to feel safe enough to share a part of themselves with me. And that is the gift to me.
that
Yeah.
that I mean, to be honest, that's a beautiful gift, and it's a gift which I know you also give as well. So that's wonderful. So look, I'm now going to take you to a place which is, have you got one? I'm sure you got more than one, but have you got a release the genie aha moment which you would like to share with us?
I do. I do. It actually happened right. The whole path started with a question. And I just simply wanted to know if there was a such thing as a safety training for kids like mine, kids who have a severe intellectual disability. So I started making these calls. I couldn't find anything. I'm calling parents because sometimes parents are the best people to find resources from. And I was talking to this one particular parent one day, and I was telling her, yeah, I want this kind of safety training. What happens with our kids if it's an everyday kind of emergency? Maybe you're cooking something and it catches on fire, it starts smoking, and then the smoke alarm goes off. Or if you fall asleep and there's a fire or something, a small fire, what happens to the person who has not had any experience? Do they run and hide? When first responders come to the door, will they know to open the door for the responder? Those kinds of things. How do we get that lived experience? And I told her, I said, I'm working with my son, but I'm really looking for a program. And the parent's response was, well, as long as your son is covered, why are you worrying about anybody else?
I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
I
So,
mean, yeah, I mean, what I would say was, it reveals their shortcomings, not yours.
well, what I did was I just said, and I was like, well, the fact that my son is covered is not enough.
Mm.
And so when I got off the phone, I said, well, let's look into this. And as I started looking more into it, no, I never did find the resource that I wanted, but I happened along other venues that said, hey, come on board. We want to hear your story. Oh, you've got something after. I really like that. You're very passionate. And I was just kind of thrust into advocacy um, on so many levels, just from seeking answers to this one question.
I love it. I love it because, as you said at the beginning, it's like you are a constant learner and student. So it fits. It certainly fits your, and it's very aligned. So
Yeah.
I love that. This is going to be interesting. So I'm going to ask you, is there one inspiring quote or mantra which really really sort of gets to you?
Yeah, there was one. It was a mantra that was given to me as I was embracing my healing journey. And the mantra is people are people. People will say what they want to say, be it truth or lie. They will do what they want to do, be it good or bad. We all have been given the power to choose. And the reason that means so much to me was because I grew up with severe trauma. My parents abused me. The sexual abuse started right around a year old, is as far back as I can remember. And I remember my mother being helpless to really stop anything. As a matter of fact, after a while, she kind of became a cohort or a help, if you will. Um, and things escalated into just starting with my dad doing things to him actually selling me for drink money and then making bigger money for entertainment, where I would be publicly raped and for small intimate parties and people would pay to see this. So I could I could have chosen the path of hate and anger, but I chose the path of love and light. And I chose the path of love and light because of that mantra, because regardless of what my parents did to me, it was their choice. It wasn't my fault. So instead of me choosing to internalize that as something I did, I chose to look at my parents and say, there's something about you that's broken, that hasn't been dealt with. And whatever that thing is, I am your relief. So I accept that you can't give me any more than what you've given, and I will use my energy to survive this.
I mean, to be honest, that's a harrowing story, but the way a lot of people would have not chosen that path. And so to hear you embrace that and not apportion blame,
Right.
and to actually keep your power.
Yeah. Yeah, I chose to do it in a helpful way because along my journey and just talking to people, because I reach out, I share my story, it gives other individuals permission to share their story, to be heard, and to know that they won't be judged. And one of the things I've heard over and over again is oftentimes a person will take the blame, even though they've been in therapy for years, even though everything points to it not being the blame, but they still say it was my fault and I got it. And what I was witnessing was them taking the blame was the one shred of power that they had in the scenario. And being able to take the blame quiets the voices in your head that ask why.
I mean, to us, that is so empowering of anyone who has experienced or is experiencing something of that nature. That's beautiful advice. So thank you very much for sharing it. I really appreciate it. And I know the listeners and viewers are going to really feel that energy. So you may have already covered this, but has there been any particular setback or failure which you've had to somehow overcome?
I don't really see anything as a failure. And in terms of overcoming things, I had to overcome something every step of the way. I had to overcome being seen as an it. I had to overcome gaining weight and using my weight as a band-aid to show my pain. I had to overcome an eating disorder that started because I was trying to get some semblance of empathy from my parents. I had to overcome being cast into a position where I'm seen as less than by my family members because maybe they saw something in me that was very different and therefore they felt sorry for me as opposed to just appreciating me for the person, witty, mouthy, gutsy, introvert that I was and still am. So when I think of things in terms of setbacks, I always say that problems are an invitation to solutions. So I don't really see things as a setback. If it's something that I'm struggling with, I may sit it to the side and say, okay, I'll revisit you later because I've got a lot of other stuff I could be doing. And maybe I need to develop a skill. So then when I come back and revisit you, then I'll be able to move forward. But I don't have anything that I could say was a failure.
Love that. And I love the perspective as well, because it's very easy, and it links with what you said. It's very easy to look at things as a bad thing rather than actually look at things in a different light. And again, it's about the embracement. And so yeah, you are desperately authentic, and I love it. So
Thank you.
so look, tell me, I mean, and who is your hero? And a hero can come in lots of different guises. It could be fictional, dead or alive, but who's something which has inspired you?
My son.
Oh,
My son is my hero. I had my son at 7 months. He was 2 pounds 7 ounces, a healthy baby who developed necrotizing enterocolitis at a week old and almost died. Um, his heart flap didn't close, so the bolus feeds that he was getting of my breast milk infected his gut, and they had to remove a third of his small intestine, close the heart flap, and they did a gut. I think they worked on his gut like 2 or 3 different times.
hmm.
So he spent 3 months in the NICU. Um, Edema. He was so swollen that you couldn't recognize him almost. He had to be intubated. He was on a ventilator, and then after that put on an oscillator. And the difference is the ventilator does longer breaths, but it was weakening his lungs. So one lobe collapsed and he developed a hole on the other side of the lung. Plus he had the fluid of the edema. So he had wet lungs and had to have a chest tube, which is a needle that's stuck in just under the arm to drain the fluid off the chest. So he was going through that. They moved him to an oscillator, which does tiny breaths. So the body is constantly vibrating. They had to clinically paralyze him so that he could tolerate being on the oscillator. So he couldn't feel anything, but he could still hear. Because of the edema, TPN is this yellowish liquid that reminds me of the vitamins they used to put in Similac. It was just very disturbing to see. Anyway, so it's this yellowish liquid that they feed this nutrition, and they told me they had to reduce it because of the swelling, and they could give him just enough to keep him alive, which meant that his brain was going to stop growing because there wasn't enough to feed his brain. And they said if he survived it, that he would be on a trach more than likely, and be brain dead.
Oh.
So being a person of faith, I believe that my God has final say. And so I went to my God and I asked if it were going to happen, then I would accept it. And I was thankful because I had had 3 miscarriages before this child. And I was just thankful to be able to see this child born. And so I had gotten to the point where every day with him was a gift, regardless of what we had to face in that day. And if God wanted to take him, I was going to be there with him regardless. So later that night, it came to me that the brain loves music. And even though he was just born, he wasn't really familiar with all the dings and the things that he's hearing in the NICU, but he was familiar with hearing himself moving in amniotic fluid. So to find music with ocean background sounds. So my favorite piece of music at the time was the Pachelbel's Canon in D. And I found a cassette with that piece of music that had ocean background sounds. What are the odds? What do you say? You manifested? Okay. Well,
Yeah.
it was manifested. And I took that into the NICU. I asked the nurses to play it a couple of hours every day. They did it, but they complained because it was so hard for them to stay awake while it was playing because it was so soothing. So, but they did it, and I called, and I was there every day to check to make sure that they did that. So they played it every day, and he would listen to it. And when the doctors came in to do an ultrasound on his brain, they called me in and Mrs. Pilgrim, come see this. And I walk into this room and it's this whole wall and just pictures of my son's brain all over the wall. And they were like, look, his brain grew. Look. And I'm thinking, well, yeah. Of course it grew because he was stimulated. You had I said, and I told him what I got him. I said, you had the stimulation of the classical music and that familiar thing that helped him to relax and allow the brain to start healing itself. So yeah, it was supposed to grow. And I literally walked out the room with the doctors just standing there looking at pictures of my son's brain, trying to figure it out.
You see, there is nothing as pure as a mother's unconditional love.
Yeah.
And that is a beautiful moving story. And talk about redemption, salvation. It's fascinating. Thank you once again. I just seem to be saying thank you a lot. So
thank you. Oh my goodness. I love to share. You're so easy to talk to.
Oh,
but I just want to say my son is now 21.
You know, talk about a happy ending in
it is a very happy.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. So tell us, what are you working on now? Because you're a lady that doesn't sit still. So what's cooking in your kitchen at the moment?
Well, through this journey so far, there's a vast realization. And the funny thing about when you're dealing with advocacy, typically you kind of have this tunnel vision about this particular thing, about this particular situation that you are advocating for. And there may be some outlying things that you tie in. Unfortunately, my brain doesn't do that. My brain is like, okay, we're going to go all the way out and we're going to work our way back in. So it started off looking at being a mom, having a premature child, a child who's already predisposed to having some intellectual difficulties, some developmental delays. I got involved with a research project that was helping mothers who were having the same experience. And at what I did, I would talk to the mothers and decipher what the doctors said to them and to tell them little things that they could do to help themselves and their child, and to kind of let them know what some of the next steps were based on what the child was going through. So that was one thing. And then it goes into, as my son grows older and autism presents itself, okay, we've got to figure out what this thing is called autism, and we got to see if we can get him diagnosed. And so I went through this journey from the time he was 3 until the age of 9, fighting to get an autism diagnosis so he could get the treatments that he had. Now, I was told I made a mistake by working with him, because as a person, when I'm researching what something is, I'm also researching how to treat it. Mm-hmm. So as I was learning what autism was, I'm like, well, what can we do to help him? And my son, who was vibrant, gutsy, the child holding the cup, raking it against the child's safety, a little thing that you put for the child's safety so they can't get the door, and he's raking it, saying, I want out. I want out. Okay. To a child who would not respond to me when I called his name, would not look at me, who wandered aimlessly. A child who delighted in going to the store and knowing that mommy was going to buy a lollipop and mommy was going to hide it in the bag. And when we get home, he'd rifle through the bags to find the lollipop, and he stopped doing that. Mm. It was like I literally watched my son not only lose his language, but lose himself over a period of months. Mm. So that was I advocated for him, and I advocated for parents who are having difficulties getting the autism diagnosis and making sure that you can go to these places and go here and do what, and this is the language you want to use. You want to make sure you document everything and blah, blah, blah. So I went to that. That escalated into not only advocating for the moms, advocating for the individual, and then I started taking a look at the providers, service providers. I cannot tell you how hard it is to sit there and you're talking to a child's doctor. Like my son, when he started having seizures, we needed to get an MRI. I took him to get an MRI. And one of the things they do, they give the kids a little gas to help them go to sleep so they'll be calm. Yeah. And they explained to the whole process, and I was good with it. And like, what kind of scent does he like? We'll make it smell really nice and all this. And then as they were getting ready to turn on the gas, I said, now he's going to fight. And I was like, no. And then she said, no, it's normal. All the kids do it. It's something about when they're getting ready to go to sleep, they're going to fight. And I was like, my son's not going to fight. She said, no, it's perfectly. And I told her, my son is not going to fight. So she stopped explaining, and they went and they turned on the gas, and they're holding it to his face. And I looked at him for a moment, and I walked over and I whispered in his ear, I love you. You're safe. Just go to sleep. And he went to sleep.
Oh, wow.
He didn't fight.
To be honest, as I said it before, it's a mother's unconditional love. I mean, wow. I mean, your story is just, the hits keep on rolling with you. I mean, it's holy smoly. So now let's move, if that's okay, to the second part, which is the wishes, where I get to ask you for my 3 wishes. So are you ready, oh wise genie?
Oh, if I could just finish one more thing, one more
Please,
statement
yeah.
about that, I would love to. What I was working up to was when that same doctor was trying to explain to me what the MRI revealed, she broke down and started crying because she was like, she's seen so many people come through like that, but the love and the trust was so apparent that it brought her to tears. And many times we take for granted that doctors and whatnot, like they don't have feelings, they have feelings, but they see horror stories. They are traumatized, they suffer PTSD. And you know this when they see an act of pure kindness brings them to tears. So yes, I advocate for them as well.
To be honest, I'm very pleased that you were able to get that very important part. So again, wow. So I tell you, every time it's wow. So I kind of feel like I've had my wishes, but I'm going to go anyway. So here we go. The first wish is, what is the best advice you have ever received in your life?
Do not take life so seriously. Have fun.
So true on so many levels. So I love that. It's pure, it's simple, easy to remember.
It's easy. Well, I tend to take things, I get very charged up and I do get headstrong and I go into things full force. And yeah, it is easier when you can take time to laugh. And that's how life with my son has been so much easier, because we laugh a lot.
Beautiful. And yeah, a great piece of advice to anyone who's listening. Like it there. So
it was just slurping on Jello. That's what I was like, what is that noise? But he's happily slurping some Jello. So there we go. My life story.
No, hey, this is real life stuff, so it's good. So my second wish is what advice would you give your younger self?
That's an interesting question, because I've advised my younger self so much. But I think if I could, I would tell my younger self not to take the opportunities that came to me for granted.
Love it. As a real thinker, that one I really enjoy. I'm going to have to go away and think about that one, but it's so profound, and I love it. Fantastic.
Well, the backstory is I was so angry with my parents with the abuse that when opportunities came when I got older, and if my parents were for the opportunity, I immediately rejected it. Whereas if I could see past them and have embraced it, I could have gone so much further in the direction that I wanted to go in at that time. But everything happens for a reason. And had I gone that way, I don't think I'd be the person that I am today.
I totally agree. And it's kind of good, because actually we may have never talked.
That is true.
So
which would have been sad, because you're a really awesome person.
Oh, no, you're not meant to make me blush. And so
I thought blushing was part of the contract.
No, that's against the rules. So my third wish, moving on swiftly, my third wish is, could you share one habit which attributes to your success?
Yeah. I think through every scenario that I've been through. And I've created a space in my head where if something happens that bothers me, I take it to that space and I create the characters, and I'm able to take that negative thing and turn it into a positive. And then once I've done that, I kind of come back and say, okay, I can deal with that.
Love it. That's just inspirational advice right there, and what a habit to actually be able to get into. So anyone who's going through trauma or anything like that, or anything difficulty, that's a very, very solid way of giving somebody hope there. So thank you.
Thank you.
My three wishes have really gone well. So I'm running to the bank on this one. So we're coming to the end, but is there one book which you could recommend for the listeners? What's one thing that's really sort of stuck in your mind?
My favorite book out of the few that I've read was Women from Another Planet. And it's our lives in the universe of autism. And it's a collection of writings from women all on the autism spectrum that share about different aspects of life: love, sex, whatever, work, experience, motherhood, all those things. And it was the first book that I would allow myself to read after I got my diagnosis. And I was so appreciative that I was reading from people who were actually autistic. So yeah, that's definitely the book. And it's by Jean Kearns Miller.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, what a recommendation. So thank you very much for that. So we need to find you. So where the heck do you hang out online? So tell us where we can get hold of you.
Okay. Well, I do have a Facebook, autismslove. I'm also found on Twitter at autismslove. And you can reach me at autismslove@gmail.com.
And I know, because a little birdie told me, that you're also on LinkedIn as well.
Yes, I am. Jackie Pilgrim.
Yeah, I knew I would have to get that. So well, look, I'm going to try to do some summing up here. A real heart-led lady who actually talks entirely from first-hand experience and can command the room without really ever trying or even knowing. So a beautiful discussion. Thank you very much for sharing that, and very moving and also inspiring. So thank you, Jackie, for being a wonderful Genie today.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's the pleasure is mine, trust me. So look, guys, if you have been inspired and moved the same as I have and enjoyed this wonderful journey, please reach out to Jackie Pilgrim and show her your normal Genie love. And I would love to hope that you now go forward as a better person from hearing this story and release your Genie. And we'll see you next time. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you, Jackie, and so long for now.
All right.
Well, that's a wrap. You have been listening to yet another episode of the Release the Genie podcast with host Paul Rogers. Be sure to follow Paul on the LinkedIn platform and learn more of Paul's resources at www.takeactionacademy.ca. And until next time, as always, be mindful and be sure to release your Genie. Thanks for listening.